Profiles once more if you've just joined us this morning, and that is the discussion we're having, the role of religion in combating COVID-19. Hit us on Twitter. AM Live NTV is a Twitter handle, AM Live NTV is a profile name on Facebook, and 20686 our SMS portal. Right. Also, you can follow me at Dibala Line Air. But here is their profiles, and then we shall buckle down to discussions. Our guest this morning, we continue with the conversation apace. You can hit us on Twitter once more. AM Live NTV is a Twitter handle. AM Live NTV is a profile name on Facebook, and 20686 our SMS portal. Let's just begin with Reverend Callisto Odede to just give us also introductory remarks about the religion and combating COVID-19. We know there has been confusion a bit from the church. We have different churches saying, okay, come this Sunday, don't come to church. We are actually trying to observe the social distancing restriction, trying to keep, a distance 1 meter, 1.5 meter away. But other churches are saying we shall continue apace with the services, right? And have people observe strictly the social distancing as well. But why do we have different, or different voices of the churches coming to bear as far as this COVID-19 is concerned? Because this is really serious. Rev?
Thank you very much, Dibal, and good morning, our viewers. I think it's important for us to reflect on the fact that the subject of today is touching on the issue of whether the government can actually give an order to the church, or whether the government can give direction to the church. Mm-hmm. And so when on Saturday the president issued some directives limiting participation in a large group gathering, including places of worship, the interpretation of that statement that the president issued varied because in a sense he didn't directly say we will be closing churches should not operate. Mm-hmm. He did say schools will not operate, will close. He said institutions of learning, universities will also close, but he did not say the same for churches. And so as a result of that, different churches interpreted that differently. Now, some of the churches thought of, for example, if I take of our own church, Nairobi Baptist Church, we actually viewed that we are in a state where there is a spectrum of risk.
Yes.
And the spectrum of risk varies from green all the way to red.
Yes.
Green, yellow, red A, red B. And we sat down and reflected on the spectrum of risk. This included the number of people who attend the church. Mm-hmm. It included the number of people who travel outside the country from the church.
Yes.
It includes the visitors who occasionally come within the church. And when you look at it in that way, you then begin to see that you have a very large congregation and you have people who are coming in and out of the country. Mm-hmm. So the level of risk is extremely high for a congregation like that. Now, if we were dealing with a church, say in Mogotio,
yes,
which hasn't received people from Nairobi and is very limited, the level of risk will be a little lower. And it is as a result of that that some churches actually made the decision that we will be closing our services, and that closure should not be in a permanent way. That closure should be temporary, because there is a role in which the church plays in a society, even in the midst of a tragedy or in the midst of a plague like this, the visible church. And if the visible church is not there, even in the midst of a plague like this, people are not seeing the church, they are not seeing the activities, then there will be a challenge in terms of where is the church? How come the church is not acting? As a matter of fact, I have even some historical data to share on the role of the church in different eras. From the early beginning of the Christian church, the church has always been there in the midst of plagues. In some cases where there were no treatment at all, the church actually was the one which was taking care of the sick. Some people died. Some acquired immunity as a result of overexposure. In history, we go through during the bubonic plague. For example, Martin Luther came out very strongly and he said that it's our duty to continue remaining active as a church in the face of this plague. And many, many people died. He even lost his own daughter, Elizabeth, as a result of that. So there is a role in which the church plays so that when the visible church has gone underground for a period, it is not necessarily that the church has abandoned society. Yes. It is basically that we've measured the risk level so that we do not contribute towards also spreading the plague. We've told our members to actually step back. And similarly also, I think those who would say we will go on with our services also need to put on in place certain measures that actually will help in restraining the spread of the virus. Now, it's important for us to also make the statement that even in the Bible, we did have a quarantine exercised, especially on people who had certain infectious diseases. So King Uzziah, in the book of Isaiah, the book of Isaiah mentioned chapter 6, 2 Kings chapter 15, actually had to be quarantined for a number of years where he would not interact with anyone else because of the illness that he was having. Lepers in the Bible had self-quarantine to the extent they would not interact with individuals. So there is a sense in which even the Bible does advocate this when there is cases of infection.
Thank you, thank you. Let's hear from Dr. Hassan Kinyua Omari as well, to just give us a snippet. Also, from the Muslim community, there has been that confusion as well, right? We have other mosques, giving directives that we're closing the mosques for prayers until further notice. Others are saying we'll continue, praying, the mosque will be open. And we know the exercises that you normally observe, the rituals that you normally observe, that can be maybe a highly contentious, infectious points, when it comes to combating COVID-19 as it is right now. What is the current state of play from, the Muslim brothers?
First, we thank you so much for this session, because as you understand, some mosques will not be open today for prayers. Even as I came here, I had to pray at my house before, because I couldn't go to mosque. The mosque which I'm living near is closed. First is that when this whole issue came up, we began our own research, going back to the times of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. What happened? Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, drawing from the Holy Quran. The Quran tells us, وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَةِ. Do not throw yourselves into destruction. Drawing from that, it means that Prophet Muhammad came and told us that la warara wa la virara. Muslims are not allowed to harm others or harm themselves. So we looked at the entire situation. We realized that the way COVID-19 is transmitted, Muslims actually are at even higher risk than all other religions. And one of the reasons is that before we perform our prayers, you realize that Muslims will always go to the toilet
Yes.
in the mosque. Then after that, they'll take ablution. So the moment you go and take ablution in the ablution area of the mosque, it means that you are washing your hands, you are putting some water in your nose, then you are washing your face, and we are told that one of the reasons and one of the factors of transmission of coronavirus is where spit and other body fluids get into contact with other persons. So looking at that, you realize that the risk is very, very high. So as soon as our president came up with the directive on Saturday, we called for an emergency meeting the same day. And we decided to minimize and advise people not to come to mosque as many as they always do. But after consulting more with people from out of the country, because now COVID-19 or coronavirus issue is a global issue.
Yes.
It's not a Kenyan issue, it's a global issue. We consulted our counterparts in UK, counterparts in Canada, in Turkey, and all other areas of the world, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and other areas. Scholars from those countries told us the best will be to close the mosques. And as we understand, the first time in the history, the Grand Mosque of Islam, Al-Kaaba, is being closed as we speak. The center of Islam is closed because if people go there, then there'll be infections. So that's the stand we came up with. But some mosques were saying, no, you don't have to fear coronavirus. Fear the one who created coronavirus, that is Allah. We told them, unfortunately, this is misinterpretation of the Quranic scriptures. We must have relevant interpretation of scriptures. So you can't say that you fear the one who created the virus, not the virus. We also have to fear the virus because we have to take care of ourselves, and that is how we appreciate the one who created the virus, because he created it and it must be feared.
Right. Maybe you can remind me, because I was reading as well that what they've discovered from a study is that the people who attended the prayer session, I don't know what particular mosque was this, from that particular community, there were high infections of coronavirus, and they had to be an intervention to prevent them to I cannot remember that particular mosque, to this another mosque, so that they can actually spread, they can actually stop the spreading of coronavirus as it is. Maybe you're privy to this particular information. Where was this?
They say it was in Karbala.
Karbala.
In Iraq. Where people go to the mosque where Al-Imam Hussein is buried, part of his body. So they said that because people go for a minor pilgrimage there, that is where the infection came for Iranians who suffered, and also from some Iranian mosques. So from that's where now Muslims all over the world realize that this is a challenge. If we don't take care of it, there'll be a problem. And in fact, people have been asking, why should Saudi Arabia close the mosque? We support them. The issue is, in Islam, if you look at the pilgrimage, either Hajj or the lesser pilgrimage, which is Umrah, there is an issue of touching the black stone.
Yes.
And everyone strives to touch the black stone. And in fact, the reason why many people die during Hajj or Umrah is because they strive to touch the black stone and kiss it. In fact, it should be kissing. If you don't kiss it, then you touch it. So if people from the entire world, many times we go for Hajj, we have 5 million. If only one person is infected, then go and kiss it. It means that the entire mosque will collapse with coronavirus.
It's very serious.
It's very serious.
Fantastic. We want to cross over down to Eldoret, where we have Reuben Kigame, who's an apologist, a Christian apologist, also to just weigh in on this as well. The role of the church or the religion in combating COVID-19. Also, where do we draw the demarcation line between the government or the state and the church? Can we uncouple that, right? Can the government give directives to the church? Good morning, Reuben. Good to see you. How are you?
Hey, good morning. Yeah. I think let's begin by indicating that the whole mess came with the whole Enlightenment period. Before the Enlightenment, there was really no separation of religion and government or normal life. And so with the increase of secularism, people began to think, well, we don't need God in our affairs. And so by the 1800s, when that particular declaration is being made, you have a major shift in the way people think. So if you were to immediately focus on the current issue, and that is the separation of church and state, it should better be stated religion and state, because it's not only the church that practices religion. We have a Muslim in the studio, we have Hindus, we have other people that have yeah, and just so much noise in my earpiece. Let me pull it out a little bit here. Yeah. So when the president declares that we are going to have a national day of prayer, I think he's acting responsibly because the assumption is always that the president or someone in government cannot be religious, which is a very big lie. And if you look at the statistics of a country like Kenya, you have a majority that practice religion, and we must necessarily separate what was going on in the West many years ago and what is going on in Africa. Kenya, for example, is a very religious state, and if you ask the average Kenyan whether we should separate the two, the majority, maybe over 90%, depending on which religion they hold on to, would tell you, no, you can't do that. So this would be what would be deemed as Western secularism. And even if you looked at the spread of the church, for example, right now the global south houses a lot more Christians than Europe and America. And so there is no way you can deny religious decisions or religious activities of a majority citizens of the world. But secondly, I would like to say, in many cases, when you define the word church or mosque or religion, people are always looking at institutions, external institutions like the buildings that people gather in, like a mosque or a church building. But really, the church is the assembly by virtue of faith. So when a church building is closed, it doesn't mean that the church has closed. No, the Christians can gather in different ways. When President Kenyatta said that the schools should close, actually in most cases learning continues, but not within those physical institutions. At the university that I partly teach, all the courses just simply moved to the online platform, and so learning continues. So you do not have to physically meet with someone for learning to go on or for worship to go on. In fact, the sweetest and the best worship is first individual before it's corporate. And so if you look at a country like China, which declares itself very secular and communist in orientation, you still have the biggest church in the world, millions that meet underground, and they are not physically visible, but it's the largest church gathering in the world, so to speak.
Right, Reuben, maybe also to ask you again, do you think that the government has taken a stern action? Because people are wondering, maybe it's the government that has really thrown religion or the religious institution into confusion, because they've not given a very pointed directive as far as gathering is concerned in the churches and the mosque and other places of course, worship as well. What is your take?
I think President Kenyatta just did the right thing, and the government has, taken a very sober decision, because you cannot legislate how a Muslim or a Christian is going to worship. And that is the one thing the government cannot do. But I must say, where we stand now, he took the right decision. It's up to the pastors and the bishops and the imams and the sheikhs to give specific guidance. And like Reverend Callisto Odede said, you assess the amount of risk and then appropriate. For example, as a Christian parent myself, and as someone who is a family, I'm a family person who believes in God, we will still gather with my wife and children, but the risk levels are lower than, say, a church that has 1,000 or 10,000 people. And it's the same with transportation. If you were to limit transportation, you can still have transportation, but if you took the regular buses that we have, maybe if you removed seats and spaced out the sitting position, you can still have a fairly controlled system. But I think the government is well advised, and there is a limit to what a human being can do. If you look at Italy or Wuhan or Iran, you will notice that for sure we can go so far. And there is a point where you just have to say what? As a government, this is what we can do. Beyond here, we can't do anything more. And you might think, why is the government legislating faith here? The government is not legislating faith. The government is actually playing the role of a custodian of a people, which is quite in line with most religious activities. If you look at the book of Genesis, chapter 1, the matter of rule and the subjugation of the world and so on is given to man. So you cannot separate religion and state per se. And I think as African countries, as African governments, we should be able to come to a point where we say, in our fabric, in our makeup, we are built with reverence for God. And so the separation of religion and state, in my opinion, is still a very Western thing.
Thank you, Reuben Kigame. We want to take a short break right now. And of course, also on my desk here, I have the Holy Quran. This is the Holy Quran for the Muslim community. And the Lord bless and peace be upon Prophet Muhammad. Also,